What if the greatest empire you've never truly heard of built cities in the clouds, without iron, without wheels, without writing? What if they aligned entire cities to the stars, moved stones heavier than trucks without machines, and created a network of roads longer than the Roman Empire? And what if they vanished, almost overnight? This was the world of the Inca, an empire of gold and stone, of silence and ceremony, a civilization that saw the world as alive, not metaphorically, but literally. Rivers were veins, mountains were ancestors. Time itself was something you could touch. But who were they? How did they rise from a single myth on the shores of a sacred lake to rule an empire stretching from Colombia to Chile? How did they control millions, with no money, no prisons, and no written laws? What secrets still lie inside the Quipus, their knotted code of memory? And when the Spanish came, why did the last emperor offer a room full of gold and still lose his life? This is not just a story of conquest, it is a mystery written in stone, a memory scattered across the Andes, still echoing in the wind, the rivers, the rituals that survive to this day. Come closer. The ruins have not gone silent. They are only waiting for you to listen. The wind carries a song here, not one made by people, but by the land itself. High in the Andes, where the sky turns thin and the clouds scrape close to the earth, lies a lake of impossible stillness, Lake Titicaca. They say it is the highest navigable body of water in the world. But titles like that are too modern, too small. The Incas saw something greater here, something older than time, something sacred. According to their legends, this is where it all began. Not with kings, not with wars, but with light breaking over dark water. The myth speaks of Inti, the sun god, watching the world drown in chaos. From the deep blue heart of Titicaca, he raised up two figures, Manco Capac and Mama Oklo, a son and a daughter, a brother and a sister. More than human, less than divine, they were given a golden staff and a command: travel until the staff sank into the earth. There, build an empire, a sacred center, the navel of the world. It's easy to dismiss stories like that until you stand on Isla del Sol, the island of the sun, and feel the weight of silence pressing in from every side. The air smells of wet stone and salt. The clouds here do not drift, they linger. And across the island, ruins sleep under layers of moss and time. Not grand temples, no, but ceremonial platforms, shadowed staircases, stones arranged with the care of a people who believed that this was no ordinary ground. When I first stepped onto the island, the sound of the waves was the only thing that moved. Everything else, still, as though the land itself was waiting. Not for me, but for something older, something it had always remembered. The Inca were not the first here. The Tiwanaku came centuries before, building colossal monoliths on the southern shore. Their city lies in ruins now, shattered gates, sunken temples, fragments of forgotten power. But the Incas did not erase them. They absorbed them, honored them, built their own myths atop the foundations of those who came before. To walk these stones is to walk across layers of belief, each one stacked like sediment, each whispering its own version of truth. In a small cave near the edge of the island, I found a shrine. Simple, a circle of stones, blackened by fire. Offerings still lay in the center, dried coca leaves, feathers, tiny woven dolls, left by Quechua pilgrims who still come here to speak with the old gods. They do not call it myth. To them, it is memory. Even now, the lake draws people seeking answers, anthropologists, linguists, historians, and those of us who simply want to understand. But what can be understood about a place that seems designed to remain unknowable? Beneath the lake's surface, divers have found terraces, steps, walls, possibly the remains of temples lost when the waters rose. There are rumors of an entire sunken city, but no one has found it, not yet, and maybe that's the point. Lake Titicaca is not just a location, it is a threshold between land and water, between history and legend, between what we can know and what we can only feel. Standing there, wrapped in wind and light, I did not find proof. I found presence, the sense that something began here, something vast and sacred, something not meant to be contained in dates or stones or names. This was the first breath of empire, and the echo still lingers. The first time I saw Cuzco from above, I understood why the Inca believed it was the center of everything. The city does not sprawl, it coils, it radiates outward like a living thing. In the time of the empire, it was not just a capital, it was the umbilical point of the cosmos, the axis where the human and the divine converged. To the Inca, this was the Cuzco, the navel of the world. They did not lay it out at random. Every street, every temple, every wall was arranged with a sacred geometry. The city was shaped like a puma. Its head, the fortress of Sacsayhuamán. Its heart, the main plaza. Its tail, the temple district of Coricancha. Even the rivers were coaxed to follow lines of myth. They believed that the soul of the empire pulsed through these channels. Walking through it, I felt the old layout beneath the surface of the modern streets. There were tourists, markets, taxis, but below the noise, the rhythm of the ancient city still throbbed, measured, deliberate, eternal. The walls spoke first. Massive stones, polished smooth and cut so precisely that even now, after earthquakes and centuries of erosion, they hold fast without mortar. The way each block fits its neighbors, no two alike, yet all locked in harmony. This was not just engineering, it was intention. The Inca built with the patience of people who believed the stones could see them, and maybe they could. In one alley, I found a single stone with 12 perfect angles, still locked in place, still untouched by time. Locals pass by it without pause. But for those who feel the weight of things, that single stone is a declaration. We were here, and we knew something you do not. At the center of it all stood Coricancha, the Golden Temple, once the most sacred place in the empire. Dedicated to Inti, the sun. Its walls were clad in gold bright as fire, so that at sunrise the temple blazed like a second dawn. The garden was filled with golden llamas, silver maize, life-size sculptures made of metal, not to be admired, but to honor the divine. None of it remains. The Spanish tore the gold from the walls, melted the idols, and built a church atop the temple's foundations. Santo Domingo stands there now, beautiful in its own way, but inside its cloisters, Inca stonework still forms the bones of the structure. You can feel the contradiction in the stones, conquest stacked over reverence. And yet Cuzco endures. Its energy does not come from monuments, it comes from the way the past breathes through the present. Children play on the steps of old temples. Markets bloom where offerings once burned. Priests chant beneath roofs held up by walls the Inca placed centuries ago. Nothing is still, yet nothing is truly gone. The 4 great roads of the empire once began here. They stretched in all directions, to the jungles, to the coast, to the high plateaus. From Cuzco, the Inca could reach every corner of their vast domain. It was both heart and hub, a city that gathered the world into its grasp. But even beyond the roads, beyond the architecture, there is something deeper, a feeling, as though the land remembers being chosen, as though the stones remember being placed. And as I stood in the old plaza, watching the last light of the sun hit the mountains, I understood what the Inca meant when they said the world had a center. They did not mean it metaphorically, they meant it quite literally. And they believed they had found it. Here in Cuzco, where the earth itself seemed to pause. There are places in the Andes where the mountains rise like frozen waves, ridged and jagged and endlessly steep, places where no road should exist. And yet, across these impossible slopes, through jungle, desert, and cloud forest, the Inca carved a path, and then another, and another. By the time their empire reached its height, there were over 25,000 miles of road. No wheels ever touched them, no horses pulled carts. These roads were built for feet. They called it the Quipu Nan, the Royal Road, a network of arteries that stitched together the spine of a continent. It was more than infrastructure. It was a declaration, a way of saying, we are everywhere. We are one. I first set foot on one of these roads in the Sacred Valley. Just a narrow stretch of stone weaving along a ridge, barely wide enough for two people to pass. But the stones were still in place, still firm. After over 5 centuries, the road had not crumbled. It had settled. Walking it felt like stepping into a memory that never faded. The Inca built with an understanding of the land that seems almost supernatural. In lowlands, the roads were straight and clean, raised above flood levels. In the mountains, they curled and climbed, sometimes cut directly into cliff faces. When the land dropped away, they built suspension bridges of woven grass. When rivers blocked the path, they carved steps, tunnels, or terraces. And all of it without iron, without beasts of burden, without the wheel. The Inca had llamas, yes, but they were beasts of burden in the gentlest sense. They carried light loads. They could not pull carts. So the empire relied on people, runners, porters, pilgrims, all moving along these sacred lines. The roads were not just a means to an end. They were ceremonial, symbolic. They were the veins of empire. At regular intervals, I found the remnants of tambos, way stations where messengers could rest and resupply. Some were simple shelters, others miniature fortresses. But all were part of the same logic. Keep the empire moving. Keep the message flowing. The chasquis, the messengers, were trained from youth. They ran in pairs, passing messages like torches in a relay. When one arrived, breathless and sweating, the next would take the baton, sometimes a verbal message, sometimes a quipu of knotted cords, and run on. It is said that information could travel over 100 miles in a single day. That kind of speed, without a horse, without a road as we think of it, it speaks to a level of organization that few ancient civilizations ever achieved. I traced one stretch high above Ollantaytambo, where it clings to the mountainside like a ribbon of gray. Below, the Urubamba River rages through the valley. Above, the peaks pierce the clouds. The road does not flinch. It simply continues. There is something humbling about standing there, knowing that your steps echo those of Inca priests, farmers, warriors, and kings. The land has changed, the people have changed, but the road remembers. In modern Peru, some of these roads are still used by locals. Others have vanished beneath jungle and sprawl. But wherever they remain, they feel untouched, not old, timeless, a road without wheels, a road without machines, yet strong enough to hold an empire together. The Inca did not need asphalt, concrete, or steel. They had stone, they had hands, and they had a vision not just of where they were going, but of how to get there, one footstep at a time. In a dry stone chamber tucked into the hillside above the sacred valley, I found no golden idols, no murals, no script carved into the walls, just a bundle of cords hanging like the roots of a tree turned upside down, tangled, threaded, silent, and yet not empty. This was a quipu. To the untrained eye, it looks like a primitive decoration. Dozens of strings, dyed in earth tones, knotted in patterns that seem too simple to mean anything. But the Inca did not use ink. They did not write books. They had no alphabet. What they had were these cords, and with them, they remembered everything. Quipu comes from the Quechua word for knot. That is what it is, at its core, a system of knots tied into spun cotton or alpaca thread. But it is also much more. It is mathematics. It is accounting. Each cord represents a category, each knot a value. Some knots are single, others are grouped. Their placement along the string matters. Their spin, clockwise or counterclockwise, matters. Even the color of the thread matters. Together, they form a tapestry of meaning. Read not with the eyes, but with the fingertips. I held one in my hands, and for a moment I felt like I was holding someone else's thoughts, frozen in string, held together by memory, not ink. The Inca used quipus to track everything that mattered to the empire: census data, harvests, tribute, military units, storage levels, births, deaths. They were the empire's ledgers, its heartbeat. They say the Quipu Kameoks, the knot makers, were trained for years. They memorized patterns, practiced their touch, developed senses sharper than sight. A good Quipu Kameok could run their hands along a string and tell you how many bushels of maize had been collected in a distant village 3 seasons ago. And yet, it goes deeper. Some believe the Quipu was more than just numerical, that certain arrangements told stories, recorded laws, remembered lineage, that these cords were not just data, but narrative. If that is true, then the Inca had a writing system all along, just not one we know how to read. I visited a museum in Lima where dozens of quipus are kept behind glass. Some are simple, 10 strings, neatly arranged. Others are vast, hundreds of threads, branching and twisting like a forest of memory. The curators admit that we only understand a fraction of them. We can decode the math, but not the message, a code lost to time. Somewhere in the empire there may have been a master key, a codex quipu, a reference that made sense of them all. But if it existed, it was destroyed, burned, buried, or hidden in a place we have not yet dared to look. Even today, the mystery remains. Some modern Quechua communities still use quipu-like cords to mark rituals, track livestock, or measure festivals. But the old language, the full language, sleeps. And perhaps that is what haunts me most. Because unlike stone temples or broken cities, these cords are fragile, they rot, they fade. And when the last one crumbles, we lose not just knowledge, but voices. Standing in that quiet chamber, with sunlight slanting through the cracks in the wall, I imagined the Quipu Kameok who once sat here. Fingers working, eyes closed, memory flowing into fiber. Not writing words, but weaving truth. The Inca did not need paper. They had threads, and through them they spoke. They counted. They remembered. The knots still hold their secrets. All we have to do is learn to listen. It begins with the clouds. They part slowly, like curtains drawn back by unseen hands. And then, there it is, rising from the ridge like a dream too solid to vanish. Stone walls, stepped terraces, roofless houses clinging to the mountainside. The city they call Machu Picchu. Not even the Spanish found it. That is why it still breathes. I arrived at dawn, long before the crowds, when the light had just begun to turn gold on the eastern cliffs. The air was cold, the wind quiet, only the sound of my own footsteps and the hush of something older watching, waiting. The sight reveals itself gradually, not in a burst of grandeur, but in a series of questions. Why here? Why so high? Why build a city so remote, so hidden that even the conquerors never saw it? No one knows the full answer. What we do know is this: Machu Picchu was built in the 15th century, likely under the reign of Pachacuti, the emperor who turned the Inca from a kingdom into an empire. It may have been a royal estate, a retreat, a sacred sanctuary, or all of those things at once. What it certainly was is intentional. The city is not just placed on the mountain, it becomes the mountain. Every stone cut to match the slope, every terrace aligned to hold the earth in place. There is no mortar, just gravity, precision, and a kind of reverence that feels less like engineering and more like worship. As I wandered the narrow pathways, I saw more than architecture. I saw understanding of land, of sky, of time. The Temple of the Sun is carved into a natural outcrop, its windows aligned perfectly with the solstice sun. The Intihuatana, the so-called hitching post of the sun, rises like a compass of stone, a ritual instrument pointing to something we no longer see. They say the priests tied the sun to it to keep it from fleeing the sky, and maybe that was more than myth. In every direction, the city opens to the sacred, to the river below, to the snow-capped peaks beyond, to the condor's path above. Machu Picchu was not just built, it was placed like a keystone between earth and heaven. What makes it even more extraordinary is how it was kept hidden. After the fall of the empire, the jungle crept in. The vines grew thick, the stones disappeared beneath moss and thyme. Locals knew of it, of course. They called it the Old Peak, but the outside world did not. Not until the early 20th century, when an American historian followed a whisper through the mountains and saw the stones emerge from the green. Even then, much of the city had to be uncovered by hand, stone by stone, wall by wall, as if waking something that had been sleeping. And yet, despite the exposure, despite the visitors and the photographs and the fame, Machu Picchu still holds its silence. It does not explain itself. It does not need to. Theories abound. Was it a university for the elite? A solar observatory? A place of pilgrimage? Each theory adds light but also shadow, because no single answer feels complete. That is the magic of it. Machu Picchu resists being solved. It offers only what you bring to it. Some see a wonder of ancient engineering, others a lost page of history. I saw a question, carved into stone, whispered by the wind, echoing through the bones of a vanished world. What was this place meant to protect? A king? A god? Or perhaps a memory? As the sun rose higher, lighting the city in full, I stood at the edge of the terraces and felt the stillness stretch out in every direction. Time does not move here, it waits. And in that waiting, Machu Picchu lives. He did not walk. The Sapa Inca, ruler of the empire, was carried through the streets on a litter of gold and feathers, his body cloaked in woven brilliance, his face hidden behind a mask that shimmered like the sun. To look upon him was to look upon divinity, not metaphor, not symbol. The Inca believed their emperor was the living child of Inti, the sun itself, walking among them in flesh. And he believed it too. His words were law, his breath sacred. Even his shadow was considered too pure to touch the ground. In Cuzco, I visited what remains of his palace, fragments of high walls, smooth as glass, cut with a precision that defies modern tools. There was once a garden here, unlike any other, not of flowers, not of trees, but of metal. Golden maize stalks, silver llamas, birds sculpted from copper, arranged with care around fountains of clear mountain water. A field of wealth, not to flaunt power but to reflect it, to mirror the abundance of the empire back to its divine source. Every part of the Sapa Inca's existence was constructed around this idea that he was not chosen by the gods, but made from them. He lived apart. His food was prepared in separate kitchens, his clothes worn once, then burned. His wives were chosen not for politics, but for purity. His every movement marked by ceremony, his every appearance choreographed like a ritual in motion. And yet, this was not vanity. This was belief. To the people, he was the center of the world, the axis around which the sun turned, the embodiment of order in a land of mountains and chaos. When he spoke, his subjects covered their eyes. When he passed, they fell to their knees. And when he died, he did not. The Inca believed that death was not an ending. The Sapa Inca's body was preserved, mummified, seated on a throne in his ancestral palace. Servants continued to attend him. Meals were placed before him. Decisions were made in his name. He still held property, still received tribute, still spoke through the voices of priests and guardians. In this way, the empire was ruled not just by one man, but by a council of the living and the dead. The dead did not rest. They advised, they commanded, they endured. In a museum in Lima, I stood before a fragment of royal regalia, a headdress once worn by a Sapa Inca during a solar festival. It was light as air, woven from the feathers of jungle birds, each color bright as flame, each strand arranged to catch the light. It was not just decoration, it was signal, a reminder of who and what the ruler was. And yet, I found something human in all that splendor, the weight of expectation, the isolation of being untouchable, the loneliness of being worshipped. What does it mean to be seen as a god? The Sapa Inca did not rule alone. He was surrounded by administrators, generals, advisors, seers, but none could contradict him. None could truly know him. His role was too vast, his life too sacred. He bore the weight of a sun that never set, and when he was gone, another would rise. Chosen from his sons, the next ruler would ascend, not just to power, but into divinity, the line unbroken, the sun eternal. But no flame burns forever, and when the Spanish came, the divine order began to fracture. Gold was no longer sacred, it was currency. Ceremony became spectacle, and the gods were mortal once more. Still, in the stones of Cuzco, in the broken gardens of the royal palace, in the stories passed down in Quechua whispers, the Sapa Inca remains, a god, a ruler, a man made of stone and gold, seen not through the eyes of the present, but through the memory of a people who still raise their faces to the sun. The air in Cuzco changes in late June. It becomes charged, almost electric. The nights are colder, the days sharper. And then, on the shortest day of the year, the city remembers. It remembers the sun. It remembers the Sapa Inca. It remembers Inti Raymi. The Festival of the Sun was the most sacred ceremony of the Inca year, a celebration held during the winter solstice when the sun stood still, at its furthest distance from the earth. To the Inca, this was not just astronomy. It was survival. If the sun continued to pull away, the world would die, the crops would fail, the balance would break. So they gathered to bring it back, to honor it, to ask for its return. I arrived in Cuzco on the eve of the festival. Though the empire has fallen, the ceremony has not. Not completely. At dawn, I climbed to the fortress of Sacsayhuamán, where the ancient rituals once took place. The stones there are still stained with the footsteps of 1,000 dancers. The terraces overlook the city like a great amphitheater carved into the sky. The people came dressed in bright woven cloth, reds and yellows, greens and blues, colors drawn from the earth and sky. Musicians played flutes and drums. The rhythm was slow, ceremonial, like a heartbeat. And then, out of the procession, came the Inca. Not the real one, of course, an actor, a symbol. But when he raised his arms to the rising sun, the crowd fell silent, and for a moment, I believed. In the days of empire, the festival would begin in the main plaza of Cuzco. The Sapa Inca would emerge from the golden temple of Coricancha, flanked by priests, nobles, and warriors. Thousands would line the streets. Offerings of chicha beer and coca leaves would be laid in careful rows. Llamas would be led forward, draped in fine cloth. Their sacrifice, though bloody, was solemn, a sacred gift to the gods. They say that the heart of the llama was held aloft, still beating, as the high priest read omens in its motion. To us it may sound brutal. To them it was necessary. The world was not guaranteed. The sun did not owe them its light. It had to be honored, appeased, loved. The ceremony would continue for days. Feasting, dancing, speeches, rituals whispered in the old tongue, fires lit on sacred stones. Pilgrims traveled from every corner of the empire to witness it. And then it stopped. The Spanish forbade it, called it pagan, replaced it with processions of saints and colonial pageantry. But the memory could not be banned. It went underground, passed in story, preserved in song, and now, slowly, it has risen again, not as it was, but as it still wants to be. At the modern festival, no real sacrifices are made. The llamas are symbolic, the rituals are dramatized. But the spirit, as I watched the reenactment unfold, I felt the weight of centuries collapse into a single moment. I heard the old language spoken in full voice. I saw children bow before the sunrise. I smelled the smoke of sage and sweetgrass rising into the cold morning air. The Inca may be gone, but they are not forgotten. They are danced, they are sung, they are remembered in the turning of the seasons and the rhythm of the land. Inti Raymi is not just a festival, it is a return, a reawakening, a prayer spoken not with words, but with movement and light. And as the sun crested the mountains, touching the stones of Sacsayhuamán with gold once more, I understood why they celebrated. Because in that light, even for a moment, the empire lives again. Empire does not always begin with war. Sometimes it begins with a gift. The Inca understood this better than most. Their rise was not a sudden conquest, but a slow and deliberate unfolding, a hand extended, palm open, or closed. At its height, Tawantinsuyu, the land of the four quarters, stretched from the edge of Colombia to the deserts of northern Chile. Mountains, jungles, valleys, coasts, all brought under one rule, not by iron, not by flame, but by something far more sophisticated: choice. When the Inca arrived at the borders of a new land, they did not always raise their weapons. Often they sent envoys first, dressed in fine textiles, bearing gifts of coca, copper tools, and brilliant feathers. They came with offers, not threats: roads, protection, access to food stores, entry into a vast divine system. Join us, they said, and you will share in our strength. Many accepted. To be part of the Inca world was to be connected to trade routes, to festivals, to prestige. A small village might suddenly find its sons walking the roads of empire, its maize feeding distant cities, its name woven into the quipus of Cuzco. But not all agreed, and when diplomacy failed, the other hand closed. I found evidence of this in the northern highlands, the ruins of a fortress half swallowed by the mountains. Its walls had been scorched, its gates shattered. Inside, the stonework changed suddenly. One style, rough and local, replaced by Inca precision, as if the old city had been rewritten in stone. These were not peaceful ruins. These were lessons. The Inca were masterful at absorbing resistance. Once a people were conquered, they were not erased. They were reorganized. Their leaders often kept their titles but reported to Cuzco. Their language survived, but Quechua was taught beside it. Their gods were honored, but always beneath Inti, the sun. Control came not only through power, but through integration. One of the most effective tools was the Mitma system, forced resettlement. Entire communities were relocated across the empire. Loyalists moved into rebellious areas. Rebels moved far from their homelands. The goal was simple: break tribal identity and replace it with imperial unity. I walked through one such relocated town. Its layout mirrored that of Cuzco. The same plaza, the same storage houses, even the same stone patterns on the walls. It was like a copy of the capital pressed into distant soil. Repetition became a weapon. Everywhere the Inca went, they brought their architecture, their language, their roads, their rituals. Over time, people stopped seeing the difference between where they were and where they came from. That was the genius. It was conquest, but make no mistake, when resistance persisted, the Inca responded with overwhelming force. Their armies were vast, disciplined. They used slings, clubs, axes, and obsidian-tipped spears. They fought in tight formations. They knew the land better than any invader ever could. Some tribes resisted for years, others vanished, and still the empire grew, not in chaos, but in layers, folded like cloth, woven like thread. Each new province became part of a greater pattern. Standing on a high ridge, looking down over ancient terraces now choked with grass, I tried to imagine what it felt like to watch the Inca banners appear on the horizon, to hear the beat of their drums, to be given a choice that was not really a choice: join or vanish. But even now, the story is not just one of domination. It is also one of transformation. The Inca did not destroy every culture they touched. They reshaped them, reframed them, pulled them into something larger. Their empire was not built in fire. It was built in patience and stone. There is no coin buried in the ruins of the Inca Empire. No silver drachma, no stamped denarii. No royal currency exchanging hands in markets or palaces. Instead, there are stones. terraces climbing mountains like green ladders, roads stretching beyond the horizon, storehouses filled with dried maize and salted fish. All built not with gold, but with time. This was the mita, a tax not paid in metal, but in labor. Every able-bodied citizen of the empire was required to serve, not as punishment, not as servitude, but as duty, as contribution. The empire gave, and the people gave back. It was a system older than the Inca, inherited from the Andean civilizations that came before. But the Inca perfected it, organized it, turned it into the foundation of their world. In exchange for land, protection, and access to the storehouses, each household owed a portion of its time. That time could be spent building roads, carving terraces, herding llamas, or serving in the military. Even artists and musicians were called upon. All labor was valuable, all labor sacred. I followed a trail into the hills outside of Ollantaytambo, where a stretch of Andeans, agricultural terraces, still clung to the mountainside. Each level was walled with stone, each step measured by hand. They curved with the land, not against it. Rainwater trickled through hidden canals. The soil had been carried up, bucket by bucket, generation by generation. This was Maita in motion, not slavery, not free will. Something between. The work was hard, yes, but it was communal. You labored beside your neighbors, your family, your clan. You shared meals, shared songs. And when your turn was over, you returned home, and someone else took your place. The empire ran on this rhythm, not of money, but of movement. Every year, the state tracked who had worked, who had not, and how much was owed. Quipu Camayokes recorded the data in cords and knots. Overseers ensured that the system did not buckle. There were no jails filled with tax dodgers, no debtors' prisons, just time, given, then received. I visited one of the remaining kolkas, a circular storage house perched on a ridge. Inside, the air was cool and dry, preserved by design. These storehouses were filled by Mita workers. They held food, tools, blankets, even weapons. And when drought or war came, these supplies saved lives. This was not charity, it was strategy. A tax system designed to create resilience, not wealth. But like all systems, it had limits. As the empire grew, demands increased. More roads, more temples, more soldiers. In distant provinces, resentment simmered. The labor felt less like service and more like burden. And when the Spanish arrived, they saw the Mita not as wisdom, but as opportunity. They kept the name, kept the structure, but stripped away the reciprocity, no longer a duty to the community. Now a demand for the mines, for silver, for profit. What had once bound the empire began to break it. In small mountain villages, I met farmers rebuilding irrigation channels by hand, not for money, for the community, for the future. In their language, Quechua, the word for labor, is still tied to love, to giving, to belonging. The Inca built an empire not on gold, but on hands. Hands that carved the roads, shaped the stones, fed the people. And in that labor, they left behind more than monuments. They left a rhythm, a heartbeat, a quiet reminder that time itself can be sacred. The stones are the first thing you notice. They do not sit, they loom. Massive blocks of gray limestone, some as tall as a man, others as wide as a room, fitted together so tightly not even a blade of grass can pass between them. This is Sacsayhuamán, the fortress above Cuzco, a riddle in stone. When I arrived, The morning mist still clung to the edges of the walls. The site was nearly empty, just the wind whispering through the terraces and the steady crunch of gravel beneath my boots. The air smelled of dry grass and ancient dust, and everywhere I turned, stone, not scattered, not random, aligned, intentional, precise. The walls rise in a zigzag pattern, 3 tiers deep, each line curving like lightning frozen in place. From a distance, it looks decorative, but stand within the shadow of those stones, and you feel the weight of purpose. Each block weighs tons, some over 200 tons, and yet they are shaped and fitted without mortar, cut to interlock with absolute perfection. The corners are rounded, the face is polished. Every joint is a handshake between one rock and another. We do not know how they did it. The Inca had no iron tools, no wheels, no pulleys as we know them, and yet they quarried, moved, lifted, and placed these stones as though they were pieces in a puzzle only they could solve. There are theories, of course. Some suggest they used water and fire to fracture the stone, then shaped it with stone hammers. Others propose long ramps and endless labor, but the more you study the site, the more the mystery deepens. Because this is not clumsy work. It is artistry. It is intimacy with the earth. Sacsayhuamán was more than a fortress. It was a sacred space. A military stronghold, yes, but also a ceremonial center. From the top, you can see the entire city of Cuzco below. In Inca times, the city was shaped like a puma. Sacsayhuamán formed its head. The jagged walls, its teeth. This was not coincidence. It was cosmology made visible. During solstice festivals like Inti Raymi, the fortress filled with life, music, dance, fire, sacrifice. Pilgrims came from across the empire to witness it, to feel the sun rise behind those walls, to touch the stones that touched the sky. The Spanish, when they arrived, were stunned. They believed giants had built it. They tried to dismantle it, dragging blocks down into the valley to build their churches and homes. Much of the site was stripped, but the largest stones they could not move. They still stand, unbroken, unbowed. And when you run your hand along their surface, cool and silent after centuries, you feel something deeper than history. You feel presence, not a ruin, but a memory still alive. I walked the length of the outer wall slowly, tracing the seams with my fingers. In some places, the stones rise taller than 3 men. In others, they dip low into the earth, like teeth sunk deep into bedrock. The scale is difficult to absorb. Photographs flatten it. Words diminish it. You have to stand here. You have to feel it. Sacsayhuamán does not explain itself. It does not offer answers, only questions. How did they shape the stones? Why this design? What knowledge have we lost? And perhaps, what are we not yet ready to understand? The Inca believed that stone was alive, that it could be spoken to, that it remembered. And here, above the city they once ruled, I believe they were right, because these stones still speak. You only have to listen. They came from the sea, pale men in shining armor, riding animals no Inca had ever seen, carrying weapons that spat thunder and fire. They wore beards, spoke a harsh and tangled tongue, and claimed to come in peace. But peace was not what followed. The year was 1532. Word of strange arrivals had begun to ripple through the empire. From the northern coast came whispers of men who walked like gods, whose hands carried death. The Inca did not panic. They had faced invaders before. Rebels, rivals. They knew how to absorb, how to tame, how to outlast. But these men were different. When the Spanish first reached Inca territory, the empire was already wounded. A civil war had just ended, a brutal clash between two royal brothers, Atahualpa and Huáscar, each claiming the throne. The scars of that conflict still smoked across the land. Villages divided, armies thinned. Into this fractured world walked Francisco Pizarro, not a king, not a scholar, but a soldier, hungry for gold, backed by the Spanish crown, and guided by tales of an empire of endless wealth. He brought fewer than 200 men, but he carried something far more dangerous: knowledge. He knew the Inca were divided. He knew they had no experience with European warfare. And he knew, above all, that speed and surprise could crush even giants. The first meetings were cautious. Envoys were sent, gifts exchanged. The Spanish marveled at the roads, the terraces, the cities carved into stone. The Inca, in turn, studied the strange weapons, the clothes, the horses. Some believed these men were divine, messengers of Viracocha, the creator god. Others were less certain. In their journals, the Spaniards wrote with awe and ambition. They described a land of abundance, a people of order, a ruler who was treated like a god, and gold, always gold. They saw it everywhere, in temples, in ornaments, in garments, and they wanted it. The first contact was not a battle, it was a calculation. The Spanish flattered, they promised friendship, they asked for meetings. Atahualpa, fresh from his victory in the Civil War, agreed. He did not see a threat. Why would he? His empire was vast. His army numbered in the hundreds of thousands. These strangers were few, and yet beneath the banners of peace, the Spanish sharpened their swords. As I read through their letters, now kept in dusty archives, I felt the chill of inevitability. The tone shifted from respect to strategy, from diplomacy to ambition. This was not a meeting of equals, it was a hunt, and the net was already being drawn. The moment of contact is one of the great turning points in human history. Two worlds, ancient and new, colliding in a moment of fragile misunderstanding. The Inca believed they were greeting envoys. The Spanish believed they were claiming an empire. I stood in the plaza where it happened, a quiet square in the modern town of Cajamarca. There is no blood there now, no fire, just children playing, vendors calling, the hum of life. But the ground remembers. First contact is never truly first. It is a culmination, a chain of choices, fears, hopes, and deceptions. The Inca reached out with ceremony. The Spanish reached back with steel. And from that moment on, the story of the empire changed forever. The strangers had arrived, and they had no intention of leaving. It did not happen on a battlefield. There were no legions marching, no drawn-out siege, no heroic stand beneath a burning sky. The fall of the Inca Empire began with a handshake and a trap. In November of 1532, the Sapa Inca Atahualpa rode into the highland town of Cajamarca, freshly victorious from civil war. His rival brother Huáscar had been defeated. The empire, though bruised, was his. He came with thousands of warriors, though most waited outside the town. After all, the Spanish were few, fewer than 200 men. No one would expect danger from such a small group. Atahualpa agreed to meet them. Why not? He was the child of the sun, the emperor of a realm that stretched farther than the eye could see. These strangers, these bearded men from across the sea, were curious, yes, perhaps dangerous in time, but they were not a threat. He believed he could manage them. He believed they would respect him. What happened next still echoes through the stone streets of Cajamarca. The meeting was staged in a plaza. On one side, Atahualpa, seated on a golden throne, carried on a litter by servants, surrounded by attendants dressed in robes of alpaca and adorned with gold. Calm, composed. On the other side, the Spanish. Pizarro stood with his men hidden in the shadows, swords ready, cannons primed, waiting. A priest stepped forward to speak. He held out a book, a Bible, and told Atahualpa that he ruled in the name of God and the King of Spain, that the Incas should accept their religion and their sovereignty. Atahualpa did not understand. He took the book. He turned its pages, and when it did not speak, when it gave no voice, he let it fall to the ground. That was the signal. The cannons roared. The horses charged. The Spanish surged forward, steel flashing, guns firing. Chaos. The Inca, armed only with ceremonial blades, did not fight. They had come in peace. Their warriors were outside the city, unprepared. What followed was not a battle, it was a slaughter. In the span of minutes, thousands were killed. Atahualpa was seized, dragged from his litter, bound in chains. The child of the sun, held captive by men he once thought beneath him. It is said that Pizarro himself shielded him during the frenzy, commanding his men to keep the emperor alive, not out of mercy, out of strategy. Atahualpa was more valuable breathing, more powerful as a symbol. In captivity, he remained composed, dignified. He held court in his cell, made demands, sent messages, even ordered the death of his brother Huáscar to secure his claim to the throne. The Spanish, astonished by the wealth of the empire, made a demand of their own: ransom. They promised to free Atahualpa in exchange for a room filled with gold. Not a metaphor, a literal room, 22 feet long, 17 feet wide, 9 feet high, filled to the line. Atahualpa agreed. He kept his word. Across the empire, gold was stripped from temples, statues were melted, ornaments gathered, the treasure flowed into Cajamarca, and still he was not freed. I stood in a small museum built near the site of his cell. They say you can still feel him there. Still waiting, still hoping, still believing that a god king could not be betrayed. But he was. Despite the ransom, despite the gold, despite the false promises, the Spanish feared his influence. His people still obeyed him. His empire still breathed. So they put him on trial. A trial with no defense. He was found guilty, sentenced to death. First by fire. But at the last moment they offered him a Christian burial if he converted. He did, and so in a dark courtyard, the last sovereign emperor of the Inca was strangled. Not in battle, not in defiance, but in silence. And in that silence, an empire began to fade. Not with thunder, but with a whisper. The room was filled with gold. Not imagined, not metaphorical, actual gold. Floor to ceiling, wall to wall. A ransom unlike any the world had ever seen. And it was not enough. After Atahualpa was captured in Cajamarca, the Spanish made a promise: fill a room with gold and the emperor would go free. The room itself was measured with a red line drawn near the ceiling. That was the mark. That was the price. Atahualpa agreed. He did not beg, he commanded. Messengers were sent in every direction, racing across the vast highways of the empire, to temples, to palaces, to sacred caves. Wherever gold was held, the order was the same: bring it. Statues were dismantled, sacred vessels taken from temples, walls stripped, ornaments pried from royal tombs. Each piece, once made to honor the gods, was now tribute not to heaven, but to survival. In the city of Cuzco, the Coricancha, the Golden Temple, was emptied. A garden of golden maize, golden birds, golden llamas, all melted, carried over the mountains, turned from art into currency. It took months. Porters arrived daily in Cajamarca, burdened with offerings. Each piece was catalogued, weighed, and thrown into the growing hoard. I saw the list once, a Spanish ledger yellowed with age, each line marking the weight of this object or that statue, each number a translation of beauty into value. By the time it was done, the ransom included over 13,000 pounds of gold, and twice that in silver, a sum so vast it staggered even the conquistadors. And yet, the promise was broken. Atahualpa was not freed. He was feared. The Spanish saw that his people still obeyed him. Even in chains he ruled. Even in silence he inspired. They worried he would rise again, that the ransom was a delay, that the loyalty of the empire ran deeper than they could uproot. So they tried him, and they killed him. Then they divided the treasure. It was smelted down bar by bar. The intricate carvings, the delicate craftsmanship, all destroyed. What had taken generations to create was erased in a matter of weeks. I found remnants of it scattered across the world. Spanish museums, European vaults, private collections. The pieces are plain now, no longer shaped like jaguars or suns or sacred ears of corn. Just blocks, coins, metals, the spirit gone. What is a ransom when the captive dies? What is wealth when it is taken from the sacred? The Inca did not hoard gold for greed. To them, it was the sweat of the sun, divine, radiant, and pure. It was placed in temples, not treasuries. It was not currency. It was offering. But the Spanish saw gold as power, and they took it. Not just the metal, but the meaning. The ransom of Atahualpa was not the end of conquest. It was the beginning of consumption. The moment when an empire was reduced to weight, to number, to profit. And yet, as I walked the corridors of the museum where one surviving gold vessel is displayed behind glass, I saw more than wealth. I saw grief, the silent kind, the kind that lingers for centuries. The Inca paid the price. They gave everything, and still they lost their king, their gold, their future, but not their memory, not their voice, because the stones still speak, the mountains still hold their names, and the sun still rises over the ruins they left behind. The empire had fallen, its cities burned, its gods defiled, its gold taken, melted, scattered. But in the shadows of the jungle, the Inca were not finished. They were waiting. The Spanish believed the conquest complete. With Atahualpa dead and Cuzco under their control, they assumed the heart of the empire had stopped beating. They were wrong. The Inca retreated, not in defeat, in strategy, into the green labyrinth of the eastern Andes, into places where no horse could ride, where the roads twisted into jungle, and the mists concealed paths that only the Andean mind could read. There they built a new capital, Vilcabamba, the city of the last Inca. It was never meant to be found. Even today, its location feels elusive. The terrain is thick with vines, rivers, cliffs. The air is humid, heavy with birdsong and unseen movement. It smells of moss, of wet stone, of something ancient trying to endure. I followed a trail marked only by rumor and ruin. Broken walls swallowed by foliage, carvings barely visible beneath lichen. At first glance, nothing remains. But listen, and the forest speaks. Vilcabamba was not a city of splendor. It was a fortress, a hiding place, a vow. From here, the royal bloodline continued. The Inca crowned new emperors. Manco Inca, the warrior king, led raids against Spanish outposts. He knew the terrain. He knew how to wait. His forces attacked in silence, vanished in daylight, and struck again with the precision of memory. This was not the empire of parades and palaces. This was resistance. Years passed, then decades. The Spanish sent expeditions, missionaries, soldiers, but the jungle protected Vilcabamba. It became myth, a ghost city, the last ember of an extinguished fire. But the fire burned. Under Manco's successors, the Inca maintained their own calendar, their rituals, their language. They built with stone. They worshipped the mountains. They honored Inti, the sun, even as they vanished from the view of the Western world. For 40 years, Vilcabamba endured, not out of hope, out of defiance, out of the need to preserve something no sword could kill. In 1572, the Spanish finally found it. They came with guns and fire. They came expecting conquest, but they found only echoes. The final Inca, Tupac Amaru, had already fled. He was captured soon after, dragged from the jungle, taken in chains to Cuzco, and executed in the plaza where his ancestors once ruled. His death marked the official end of the Inca Empire. But Vilcabamba never truly died. It was never about walls or palaces. It was about the refusal to vanish. Even now, in the forests of the Andes, you can feel it. The paths once walked by warriors and messengers, the terraces grown over with wildflowers, the silence that holds more power than any sermon. The Spanish built their churches, but the jungle kept its secrets. I stood beneath the ruins of a small stone structure, no larger than a room, and imagined what it must have been like to rule an empire from exile, to raise children in hiding, to hold festivals beneath the canopy where the sun could barely reach. They were not preserving wealth, they were preserving identity. Vilcabamba was not the end of the Inca, it was their transformation. Their final stand, not in open battle, but in quiet continuation, in survival. And maybe that is the truest kind of resistance, not the roar of war, but the whisper of memory, still breathing, still alive. The empire is gone. The palaces, the emperors, the rituals, gone. The last Inca died beneath a Spanish blade. The temples were stripped of gold. The roads were overgrown. And yet, the stones remain. I walked the sacred valley in silence, tracing my steps along crumbling terraces and forgotten walls. The air was cool and thin, the sky vast and watchful. In the distance, I heard the sound of water, a thin stream slipping down the side of a mountain, unchanged since the days of empire. And I realized the Inca are not truly lost. They are waiting, in the stone, in the soil, in the sun. The people still speak Quechua. They still greet the mountains with offerings, still plant their crops by the cycles of the moon, still call the land Pachamama, Mother Earth. History did not erase them. It simply looked away. I met a farmer near Pisac who showed me how to read the land, how the terraces keep the soil from washing down the slopes, how the irrigation channels, cut centuries ago, still guide the rain. These were not ruins, these were tools, and they still work. At sunrise, I watched a shepherd bow to the east, offering coca leaves to the light. He did not speak of gods, he did not speak of empire, he just whispered, a quiet thank you to the sun, to the day, to the breath in his chest. The Inca believed the world was alive. not in metaphor but in truth. The mountains were Apis, sacred spirits, the rivers, veins of the earth, the stones, vessels of memory. When they carved them, they were not just building, they were listening. And even now, if you stand still long enough, the stones speak back, not in words, in presence. The shape of a wall aligned with the stars, the curve of a temple that matches the path of the sun, the weight of a doorway that frames the rising moon. None of it was accidental, all of it alive. In Cuzco, I placed my hand against the foundation of the old palace. The stones were smooth, cold, but beneath the surface there was heat. Not literal, not measurable, but something you feel when you close your eyes and remember. This was once the center of a world that did not need maps to find itself. Just footsteps, just light, just memory. The Spanish built churches on top of temples, but they could not move the stones, could not erase their fit, their gravity, their story. The conquerors wrote their versions in ink. The Inca wrote theirs in granite. And time has chosen which will endure. As I left the valley, I looked back one last time. The clouds hung low, soft and slow. The mountains stood still, ancient and watchful. The air was filled with nothing but breath. And yet I felt surrounded, not by ghosts, but by echoes. The kind that do not fade, the kind that do not ask for remembrance, because they never left. The Inca Empire rose, the Inca Empire fell, but its spirit remains, woven into the land, hidden in the quiet, carved into the bones of the earth. You only have to listen, and you will hear it. Not a song of sorrow, but a song of return, because history does not whisper, it waits.